Hello and welcome to Punk Rock Tabletop. Today I'll be talking a little bit about the classic naval military board game, Battleship. Now, similar to me before I did research into this game a couple of years ago, I believe that the Battleship game was just a plastic little board game created by Milton Bradley. This, in reality, could not be farther from the truth. The origins of the game that we now know as Battleship actually originated as a Russian military officer's pen and paper game that predates World War I. Its first commercial publication was under the name Salvo back in 1931 by the Star-X Company in the United States. Throughout the 30s and 40s, multiple versions of the game were created by rival companies. One thing that did remain constant was that it was a pen and paper game to play. It wasn't until 1967 that the Milton Bradley Company produced a version of the game that was made out of, as we all know, the plastic with the little plastic ships and peg pieces. And of course, with any board game that's gone through time and history, there have been several versions of it released. One of the more recent ones being in 2008, published by the Milton Bradley Corporation, kind of introduced hexagon tiles and little islands where captured men figurines could be placed, as well as additional rules as to where ships could actually be placed on your board. After the release of the movie Battleship in 2008, much like most of us, the game itself reverted back to a easier and simpler time, and now the standard version of Battleship is the 1967 style, which we all know and love. I do kind of say that half-jokingly, since there are a lot, and I mean a ton, of variations of Battleship. The common way that we all know involves each player having one shot per turn, and each of the square grids being 10 by 10. There has never been a real standardization of the types of ships or the size of squares that are used amongst the different Battleship versions. Listed by a number of spaces, there are two common sorts of lists of ships. They tend to be either 5, 4, 3, 3, and 2, or 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Again, just depending on the style of battleship you're playing. Though some international versions do have some twists on just the standard horizontal or elongated ones. For example, in Japan, one of their versions that was kind of standard until this international Milton Bradley version was released involved an aircraft carrier that was the shape of a T. And using that as an example, there have been a myriad of standardized rules or special things that different versions of Battleship will allow you to do. For example, in the said Japanese version of it, you have a limited supply of ammo, as well as some tools to not only move your ships around during the course of the game, but also be able to sort of scat out, 2x2 grids of locations. Of course, with all these rules and versions out there, everyone's bound to have a favorite. And this is my favorite way to play the game as follows. Give me any sort of 10 by 10. I'm fine with that standardized board size. When it comes to what ships to use and their sizes, I'm honestly very flexible with it. I kind of like the 5, 4, 3, 3, 2, just out of tradition, but 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is just as fine with me. Then if you were to ask me what the standard rule for what you're able to do during your turn, it is for every ship you have, that is one shot you get to fire against the opposing player. For example, as long as you have 5 ships up, you get 5 shots. If you're down to only 2 ships still floating, you only get 2 shots. Of course, with this rule I do sort of encourage a best 2 out of 3 games or best 3 out of 5 or whatnot, since sometimes a player can get really lucky and sometimes a player cannot be as lucky. One rules variation that, of course, you'd have to have the multi-shot rule in place that I've been kind of enjoying lately is you name all your shots according to the grid, and your opponent just simply says how many of those spaces were hits and how many of them were misses. This adds a slightly more logic and puzzle aspect to the game, which I do enjoy since the game and its base rules that is commonly played relies very heavily on luck. And speaking of luck, good luck might come your way if you go to www.theculturecache.com. The luck won't come for any particular reason, I just think you might enjoy the site. Well, there are of course a myriad of articles and topics and videos that might be relevant to your interests. And of course, while you're there, check out the donate little tab there. Help us out and make you feel better about yourself. Build yourself up some good karma. And if you're like 99% of the rest of the world and enjoy shopping on Amazon.com, feel free to use one of our Amazon.com links located and sprinkled all throughout the site. It costs you nothing extra and it helps us out immensely.